Well, hello, Liberty listeners. Welcome to another episode of Liberty Road. We're doing something a little bit different today. We're sitting down with one of my dearest friends to talk about a really hard thing. And it's a hard thing that we're all going to go through at some point with somebody that we love. And my dear Yvette is kind enough to join us on the podcast today and share a little bit of her story to benefit us and so that we can learn from her own experience. Yvette, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
You're welcome.
And it's Yvette Martinez-Rea. Excuse me, I didn't give the full name here. I can't be so casual. So why don't you just get us started? Let me kind of set it up here. You emailed a couple handfuls, because you have lots of friends, a letter to some dear girlfriends. And the letter was essentially, I hope you don't find yourself in this situation. Why don't you start off with the story, the situation you found yourself in?
Sure. So 3.5-ish years ago, my husband, your friend,
Yes.
Andy, was diagnosed with stomach cancer after several weeks of what we thought was no big deal kinds of, stomach heartburn type issues. Eventually, something happened where he had to go to the hospital. They quickly assessed that he had stage 4 stomach cancer. And we went right into everything you go into when that happens. And best case scenario, we thought we'd have 18 months. We thought that was pretty likely. We thought we were going to get 18 months. We got 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. So from the time he went into the hospital for the initial issue, 10 weeks later, he was gone. Mm. So I was 48 at the time, 2 kids, teenagers nearing the end of their high school journey, and was not what I was expecting at all. No one ever does, I think, but in particular, there was nothing to indicate that, that was how we were going to end the year. The letter came about because suddenly I went from, wife and working mom, very much in many ways clueless about what was going on financially and logistically in our life, because Andy handled all of that, to having to be in charge and aware and handle not only the business of somebody passing away, but then now the business of my life and my kid's life. And it was overwhelming. It was, I was shocked by how little I knew. It was a really, really tough experience, because I was used to being in control of my life and knowing what was going on with my kids and my job and and suddenly I was thrown in the middle of the most massive grief I had ever experienced, into this business administrative role that I was wholly unprepared for.
You won't say this, but I'll say this. You're a high achieving woman who had a job at the time, continues to have a job at the highest level. And I say that to say, this is somebody who pays attention. This is somebody who is very capable. Lest our listener think that you were eating bonbons and toiling away at Neiman Marcus. That's not the case.
No, you're right. I was in a job at that point where I had $1 billion budget and, a team of 50 people and, all of those things. And I would say, Netta, one of the things that most surprised me, I think, of myself was to recognize how I had let myself in this other realm of my life kind of move away from details. But the letter came about because maybe a year and a half after that, somewhere along that journey, I had so many wonderful friends like you who propped me up and helped me through it, other women primarily. And at one point, one of them, our friend Laura, made a comment to me that really stuck with me. And she said, "You're the first of us. You're the first one, but you're not going to be the last one."
Mm-hmm.
And she said, the odds are, right, that more of us, as we enter this stage of life, will start to lose our husbands, and we're losing our parents. This is all happening at the same time. And she said, you should write down all these things that you're learning, and help us, because none of us know any of the stuff that I kept saying. I was being surprised by. So the email came about, and I think it's called Unsolicited Advice. I think one day I just said, I'm just gonna, you guys aren't asking me, but I am gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you all the things that I think you guys need to educate yourself on today, the conversations you need to have today, don't be me. And who knows, hopefully no one will ever be in a position where they need it. But the odds are that many of us will.
Yeah.
And so that's all it was just my attempt to capture and push forward some knowledge that I'd wished I'd had.
Yeah. Which in and of itself is overwhelming. I think if, everything's rolling along fine, everything's happy, sun's out. If I had to do all that, I'd be overwhelmed. Never mind the backdrop of losing the love of your life. And I know he's not lost, because you wrote a beautiful poem that he's not lost, but the love of your life passing away, and then having to manage the grief of your children and your own grief. And now somebody is like, hey, I need some paperwork. I need to know I need to know that account number. I need to know that. It's mind boggling. I can't even wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
What was the first thing you did or had to do?
Okay. So the very first thing I will actually say is you don't have to do anything. And we believe somehow that we suddenly have to jump into the sort of the business and the processing of someone's passing. And one of the things I learned through this experience is that you actually can move much, much slower than you think. And in fact, in many cases, it's to your advantage to move much, much slower. And I'll tell you a story that taught me this very quickly, which is in my mind, I being the type A person, I think I downloaded something that was like, what do you do when someone dies? And it's a checklist. And one of the first things it said is inform the credit bureaus so that no one effectively steals the identity of the person who's passed and starts to open credit cards, et cetera. It sounds very scary. Mm-hmm. And so I did it. I'm a Girl Scout. I was like, oh, this first thing on the list, I got to go do the thing. The minute I did that, literally in the same minute, all of my credit cards were shut down because it turned out I'd had these cards with Andy for 20 years of marriage, and it turned out that I was a card holder, not a credit holder. I didn't even know there was a difference. Yeah. I didn't even understand there was a difference. So I went from suddenly having credit card ability to spend to it being immediately shut down as soon as I informed the bureaus. Now, luckily, I had a personal card that I hadn't used in years, and that's what got me through. But what I learned later is that is legally what they have to do. As soon as they're informed of someone's death, they have to shut it down. I didn't have access anymore, even to past statements. I mean, it was a mess. And in retrospect, what I've learned is I didn't have to tell them right away. I could have, taken a few weeks or months even, and gotten myself a little bit more in order. So that was the first lesson. The first thing I did, and also the first lesson I'd like to pass on to people is you don't have to move as quickly as you think you do. And it's actually far better to stop if you can and have someone else who's not in the situation, a friend, a sibling, someone, really sit and think through what is the financial situation? What is the situation of the decisions that need to be made in the next few weeks and months? And then start to work through what the actions are you have to take. I was in action mode within days, and that I didn't need to be.
Was some of that a way to manage grief?
I'm sure, I think it was panic, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, this idea that it was all on me, and I hadn't gone through it before, so I had no idea. And like it or not, it's an interesting time, because like it or not, everybody's looking at you and watching you. Your children are watching you. Your parents are watching you. Your friends are watching. Everyone's watching you. And I think there is an instinct to keep moving and keep functioning to the extent you can, so that all of these worried eyes around you get a little less worried, even though, that shouldn't be your job in that moment. But now, I told you I had 10 weeks. I am so grateful for those 10 weeks. I'm also grateful in some ways that it was only 10 weeks, because those were 10 very, very painful weeks for Andy. So I'm glad he didn't have longer to suffer. But I'm so grateful for having those 10 weeks, because something happened when we got the diagnosis. He was actually very optimistic that he was going to have a lot of time. And for some reason, I wasn't. I didn't think it was only going to be 10 weeks, but I thought I knew it was going to be short. Somehow in my heart, I knew. And I immediately started writing down passwords and asking him for where was this and where was that. And he hated that. He hated it. It felt to him like I was
giving up.
Yeah. And that was really, really difficult. But I am so glad that I at least did some of that. It made it easier. It was not easy, but made it easier when I had to go handle things. And I still laugh, because he shared with me his very unsecure Google sheet that he kept with all his passwords, and I didn't look closely at it because I was like, great, I have it. I'll use it later. And after he passed away, I went to it for something, and it said some important account, and it said the password was the same as last year, but with a capital.
Oh my gosh.
And things like that. And so in retrospect, I'm glad I got the sheet. I wish I had actually looked at it and went through it and said, babe, explain this one to me, explain that one to me. But that was a tough thing to do. And it's one of the things I do try to tell people: don't wait till you're in that crisis. Yeah. In retrospect, I wish he and I had a twice a year financial,
download
estate discussion, when it was not amplified by being in the middle of this, cancer fight. I wish we had a practice as a couple of, in a non-emotionally charged place and time, getting ourselves in order and asking the questions. And, if I could give anybody a piece of advice, it would be figure out how to do that. I promise you, it will not cause someone to get ill and die if you actually sit and have a conversation about what if, let's sit in a totally non-threatening way. Let's talk about if something happens to either of us, and talk about, do we know where everything is?
And thank you for promising us that it won't actually cause anything to
that's
happen.
Really what people have said that. They're like, oh, I'm just so worried that's like a,
they're like knocking on wood after they,
Yes.
No. I remember you saying to me, I don't remember when, but I think it was soon after Andy passed, and you said, and we were trying to find, everyone was trying to help you find like their financial planner or their, like everybody who knew somebody. And you said, Andy left me a folder on his desk. But it sounds like even with Andy having prepared some things, maybe it was the logins, it was even that was not enough. So again, highly capable, highly functioning person who thought about his family and the future. You guys owned multiple houses. Like there was a lot here to manage, and he was doing his job. But even then, there were holes and there were gaps.
Yeah. And I get annoyed with myself that I was like a 50s housewife in a sense with that part of our lives. I hadn't always been, but somehow as my career grew, I just let him kind of handle it. And he was doing a great job at it.
Yeah.
And as you know, so there was no reason. But what happened is he was doing it in his own language, in his own way, he had the understanding, he had the map in his head.
Yeah.
And it made perfect sense to him. And then all of a sudden when he was gone, and by the way, we did try to talk about some of this while he was alive, but he was fighting cancer. He was doing chemo. He was doing radiation. His brain was not in the same place it had been. And even his attempts to describe to me the map, just didn't make perfect sense. So that's why I encourage people, like, don't wait till those moments. And even if someone tells you I've got it and it's all written down and it's this, unless you have personally sat and said, do I understand this? Do I really, really get this picture? You're going to be on a back foot, and it's not great.
What are kind of practical things that perhaps you did do after he passed that, we should be doing now? Or just what would you recommend? How would you recommend we get organized? How do you, we have the conversation. I think that was great. Twice a year, sit down. You already promised us, and this is a money back guarantee sort of promise, that nothing's going to happen. But what are the things that we should be doing, very practically speaking? Because I'm becoming aware of them as you're saying them. I became aware of them in the email that you sent. It's not because I actually was aware of them, even when I thought, I should be aware of those things. I didn't know what to be aware of. Yeah.
So we had an estate plan and will and all of those things. So that's the first thing. Like, anybody who hasn't gone and done all that work should do that work, because that takes, especially if you have assets like homes and if you have an estate plan and you have things in the name of the trust, if you establish a trust and you put things in the name of the trust, that in and of itself is just helps a lot. There's a lot of things. So that for sure I would encourage people to do. And through that conversation, that will force some decisions and discussion on what happens if someone gets sick, what happens, et cetera. And I think those are really important discussions to have. It certainly made me feel better knowing that at least I knew what his wishes were, and he knew mine, right? So that was done. So that for sure, I encourage people. I would say the next thing that is really around what I would call the kind of cash flow and spending means, right? The things about the credit card, really important. Make sure you are a card holder. A credit holder, not just a card holder. Make sure you understand how things get paid and from where and how often, right? What is that cash flow kind of process for your life? Often we just know things are getting paid, but we don't really know, how, and at least I didn't really know how everything was getting paid and when and all of that. So just amassing that.
Meaning that there are either more sources where these things are getting paid, other accounts that are have different interest rates. This isn't necessarily like just the checking account that everyone's used to. There are other,
Okay. So, yes, exactly. And then, so I would say just kind of having that understanding is just level setting. Understanding the do's and don'ts. Like, for instance, when you have a shared bank account with someone, to this day, my bank does not know that Andy has passed away. And that is because I learned after the credit card debacle that the minute I told the bank, they would also shut the account down. Now, my name is on that account, but it doesn't matter. They legally have to do that. And so in order for that not to happen, I actually have to go open a new account and I have to transfer things. And then you lose the history of everything you don't get access to that anymore. Wow. And so sort of learning and understanding some of these rules that the financial institutions have to follow is really important, because had I done that, I had not had a credit card and then I'd also informed the bank at the same time, I would have just been out of luck in terms of actually accessing my own money.
Is there's no way to transfer your history?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, this seems like another archaic, like once once the man's gone?
Yeah. So just kind of, that's what I mean about the sort of cash and access, because you still have to, the bills don't stop.
No.
You don't get a magic button where you get to say, hey, my husband died, I need a couple months to get organized. That doesn't stop. The mortgage is still due. The gas is still, like, everything has to. And it was stressful because everything was he was doing it all online. And so all of a sudden I had to go figure out, okay, how do I log into all these things? And he was not an auto pay guy. So I had to be like, oh shoot, I got to go, put the, his salary I think he got his salary for maybe a month. I think they gave it to me for the month after he died, and then it just stopped. Right. So all of a sudden, a material amount of cash flow was gone. So so that's what I mean about the whole cash flow thing. Like really thinking through, like, if this happens and I have to keep paying bills with one less salary for the next 6 months, like, where am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? Do I have credit? Do I have savings? And how do I keep access to all of that? So I would say that's a big bucket of things.
Because we can feel inaccurately secure with our financial situation based on assets that we can't liquidate quickly. We can't move through quickly. So, okay, great. It's a good point.
All right, insurance. So 2 types that I had experience with. So one is the health insurance and the related health insurance. Now we turned out to be pretty lucky here because we both actually were paying for insurance through both companies, which meant we were very well covered. And I actually don't think that was intentional. I think that was an accident, but it worked out. But he also, for whatever reason, had clicked a box on his insurance that was hospital insurance. Now, one of the fun facts is that many of our insurance plans do not cover things like ambulances and hospital stays. And and that can add up, especially when someone's got, something like this, very fast. And thankfully, my husband had chosen an additional, premium for hospital insurance. And that was a lifesaver. And so things like that, I had never consciously thought about it or talked about it. And it just turned out to be a big saver for us. But then the life insurance was different. Andy died 2 weeks before his 66th birthday. I had in my head what the insurance, payment was going to be. What I did not know is that when he turned 65, that amount actually was reduced by half, just by virtue of the type of plan that he had. Now, we'd never talked about it. We'd had the plan for 20 years. We'd talked about it 20 years before, and we'd never come back to it and said, is this, again, and then going back to our lives were much more expensive 20 years later.
Yeah.
We'd never actually come back and recalibrated, do we have enough insurance?
Yeah.
What happens at the different age stages? And again, wish we had done that. So it was a bit of it was a big shock, to just to kind of think, okay, I've got a number that's going to come. And then all of a sudden that wasn't it. There's also things like, I could go on and on. I found out that one of the things I had to do within 6 months of him passing was I had to get the property appraised. So there's a lot. So this comes down to taxes. So the next thing you have to do is make sure you've got a good tax person, and you go to them right away and you say, what are all the things I'm going to have to do? Because you will still have to file a tax return on the behalf of that person. When they die, what happens is they assess your total value as a person based on the day they die. And there's all sorts of tax things that happen. But I had to have all the property assessed. And that was things like that I'd never thought about. I never knew. It wasn't that it was hard to do. It was just, if I hadn't had a tax professional guiding me, I wouldn't have known. I would have probably missed that 6-month window. There would have been negative tax implications for that. Again, just so much you just don't know. So those are kind of the big things. Oh, this is one of those privileged people problems, but as you said, we have more than one house, and Andy took care of all of them. I didn't know how to turn the water off. I didn't know where the electrical panels were. I didn't know who we called for certain things. And, houses still need things. And all of a sudden, something would go wrong, and I'd have to probably the times that I would break down the most after the initial big grief was something would go wrong in the house, and I'd have this recognition that I was clueless. I had no idea. Something happened in one of the houses with the furnace or the heating, and the HVAC guy comes over and he says, "Where's the furnace?" Like, I don't even know what a furnace is, honestly. And he was a perfectly nice guy, but just the look on his face of like, "What do you mean you don't know where you're?" And I about burst into tears in that moment, because it was just it's like another little knife. That just reminds you that your person's gone and that they held so much. And by the way, we do too. If I had gone, he would have had the same, he wouldn't have known, what size shoes the kids wear, or whatever, these things that we keep. And you can't prepare for all of it, but I would say things like, just know the basics of your home and know the basics of who gets called for what. And then all the other things I talked about, it'll help a lot.
I heard you say these are privileged people problems, but I just want to also say that there can be a false sense of security when we have so much, and the cost of keeping all of that up means I don't mean just the financial cost. I just mean the amount of stuff you had to do multiple times, because it wasn't just one home, and you were still in the thick, the beginning of your grief. And so I don't know if those are privileged people problems or just people problems. Yeah.
The other couple of pieces of advice I can offer people. One is the bills for the health stuff will start coming. The medical bills will start coming within days. And they will come and they will come and they will come. And you will be overwhelmed trying to figure out what they say and what insurance covers and doesn't cover. You do not have to act on those right away. Those are definitely ones that can wait a little bit. Those are also ones that I learned later, that you can there's very little you can actually outsource to friends, because you can't pick up the phone. You can't have a friend call the credit card company. The credit card company will not talk to a friend, but the hospitals will, and the doctor's offices will. So if you ever in a situation with a parent or anybody, and you're trying to sort through all of the medical bills, you can have someone else do that on your behalf and call and say, "Hey, we're trying to understand this. We're trying," they will talk to others, because it's about the bill, not about the patient. And you can negotiate those as well.
Oh, that's a great tip.
That's a very important thing I learned. The other thing is, none of us realize how many accounts we have out in the world. If you just think about, how many streaming services you have, and then start to add every other account you have out in the world, almost all of those were in my husband's name. So having to actually call over and over and over and over again and say, "My husband died, my husband died, my husband died," was really painful. And every place has its own set of rules. Some of them need the death certificate. Some of them need it in person. Some of them need it, a physical copy. Some of them will take it digitally. Some of them don't need it. Some of them need you to fill out a form. It's a huge, it just sucks. It sucks so much out of you to go do that over and over again. I would say the things that are not financial, have friends do them for you. Have Netta pretend to be Yvette, and let Netflix know that they need to change the name to, like the more you can sort of carve out some of those actions, to just take a little bit of that weight off, I think is something I would highly recommend.
This is an odd question, but most of us, because, well, I'm hearing this as a friend. So if somebody says to me, "My husband died," I have grace for that person, right?
Mhm.
When you're dealing with companies, is there any grace, or are they like, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Ray, please submit your
Yeah.
$19.99. Like, what is that
Yeah.
like?
I had all of the experiences. In fact, I have a customer, actually, Xfinity is a customer of mine in my business today. And I was just meeting with some of their executives the other day, and I started to cry in the meeting because I told them, I said, the kindest person to me in the whole was an Xfinity employee, was someone I had to walk in and I had to, show the death certificate. And she came right around the counter and gave me a big hug. And I said, you guys, I wish I'd taken her name because I would give it to you, because most just read the script. We're so sorry for your loss. And then they move on. She showed up in a very human way. But my favorite experience was I was on with the cell phone provider, or I was trying to get through to the cell phone provider. And so I was in the automated queue of things online, and they ask you, right, what is your issue? And so I was like, I don't know how to. I was like, well, I have to report a death or something. And I got a recorded message back saying, we're so sorry, but the Department of Recording a Death is experiencing long wait times. I wish I got it. I wish I had recorded that, because it was
Like
it was
an
hilarious.
SNL skit. You're like, no.
It was, yeah, it was pretty funny. Those are probably the worst, when it's just you're just like, oh, this is just, I cannot believe I'm doing this raw thing and I'm getting back this robot voice.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to really quickly. So it sounds like the tax person was good that was an early call. I just want to summarize some of what you've said. It sounds like from Netflix to hospitals, get a friend to do that. Don't call the credit card company and cancel anything unless you first understand that you're a credit holder. And if you're not one, can we become one easily?
They won't just put you on that. You have to basically open a different card.
Okay.
But you can. I mean,
sure.
But it's a different account. But you do lose access. So I had to ask them to email me like the previous 6 months worth of statements. And I literally got physical, I got emails that I had to print out to go through because I immediately lost access.
Wow. So that means also, if you're relying on your husband's credit score for XYZ, and you think we have a great credit score, we do not.
I did not have a credit score, or I hadn't been building one in the last 20 years, because it was all accruing to his name.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, I would have kept a card, and I would have kept using a card for our bills to sort of have that.
Because again, for those who don't know, it's that regular use that builds the credit. It's not enough to just have it in your drawer, in the junk drawer for a rainy day. Anything else that you want to recommend before I move us on?
No, I mean, I think you mentioned you helped me with this, but I think finding a financial planner, that's a little tricky, I think. But because what you want is someone that's going to stay with you. At least I wanted someone that was going to stay with me. And that's a little bit more like, we got to really date a few people to figure out who that's going to be. But I think that's an important thing, at least now where I am now. I'm glad to have one.
Yeah. Is there a resource? I know you attached a resource for us as your friends. Is that something that is shareable?
Yes. Okay. And look, you can go online. There's 100 of these almost templates that you can fill out. And this is what I mean about the 6 months, like what you can fill out with your partner or your parents or whatever, to make sure you actually even have everything written down. So that's what I think I attached is like, go do that.
Yeah. Okay. We'll attach that in the show notes. I'll find a couple other ones so people can find one that they're comfortable with. But it was looking through those questions and realizing how many I didn't know. And I think I do know, because I handle a lot of that in our house. I mean, Brian handles like the investment stuff, the long-term stuff, our retirement, our insurance, that stuff. But I handle the day-to-day, and it's a false sense of security, because I was like, oh, I actually don't know. I actually don't really know those things. I want to ask you about the moving slow, moving fast piece. You talked about that with regard to credit. You talked about that with regard to how quickly you need to pay certain bills. What about leaving your home and moving? And for some people, that's going to be a financial decision, right? How quickly they need to do that. You were in a situation where you had a little bit of time, and when you finally moved, you had to you chose to downsize because you also had one child who was going to college and one soon after. Any advice on that, the pace of that?
I got into a mode where I wanted to move very quickly. Not only on moving out of that house, but getting rid of other. In fact, I came back for the day Andy died. He died early in the morning. And I came back to that house, and my parents were there. The kids, people had descended. And I remember walking in and my brother coming up to me, and I said, get rid of it all. Like everything, burn it all down, sell everything. I don't want to ever see a thing I own. I don't want to ever step into a house that I've lived in with him again. So that feeling lasted for a good while right after he passed, in that I wanted as quickly as possible to not have to picture the living room and him on it, and on the couch. So my instinct was to try to move really fast, and it felt like my life had already been burnt down, but physically it was the same, and that there was a
didn't match
congruence of that was very uncomfortable for me. And so I wanted to move that quickly. I am really glad that I was talked out of that. And was given the guidance that for the kids, primarily, that wasn't a good idea. But B, that I needed to let the waves of grief, kind of get to a place where I wasn't reacting just, emotionally. So I think it was more than a year before I put the house on the market and sold it and downsized. And I think that was the right amount of time for me. But I was glad that I slowed that down.
Yeah.
And it was, for sure.
And what about as you were choosing to downsize? How did you process, like, what do I keep and what do I save for the kids? And how did you process that? Or any advice for that? It's probably a big question to ask.
You just made me realize I don't think I've said probably the single most important piece of advice is that I was very, very lucky to immediately, when Andy was diagnosed, be connected to a trauma therapist, a grief and trauma therapist. And even before he passed, to start talking to someone who stayed with me, through the journey, and was essential. You helped me connect the kids with some therapists for them. So the three of us were very quickly in therapy, specifically around this journey. And I would just suggest to anyone. I just connected a friend with the same therapist because her mother is experiencing dementia. Now, she's probably going to live for many more years, but her daughter is facing the loss of her mother as she knew her. Yeah. And what I am saying to her is, have someone help you walk this journey, because it's really useful. So I would say that would be my number one piece of advice, is get help, get someone to walk it with you. Who knows what they're doing.
And professional help, because you had no shortage of friends who loved you and came alongside, but that's different.
Yes. But my therapist was the one when I started to try to work through, do I keep things? Do I just box them up and put them in in the closet? What do I do? And what she said is, you'll know by how nauseous you feel. If you go into the drawer, his bathroom drawer, and you want to just start throwing things away, and you start doing it and you get nauseous, she said, then you're not ready. So you want to just close the door again. The body doesn't lie, is what she would say. Your body will tell you. And so if you have to move out of the house and you know you have to clean out the closet, take the clothes off the rack and put a garbage bag for donation and a box for putting them away, and put them in one of them and see how it feels. And if your body feels okay, don't question whether it's the logical thing to do, or Liam's never going to wear his suit, so why am I saving it? She said, don't do that. Just trust your gut. And then you can come back to the stuff that you weren't ready to whenever and do it again. And then there'll be a day where you're like, okay, I can let this go to Goodwill. So that was very useful for me.
And I remember then too, because I offered my organizing services, and you said, I have somebody that's like genius at this, and like, it's gonna help me. I have the friend who's, a little OCD, and she's exactly what I need in this moment. And so that was helpful too, to have somebody with you.
I personally did not let anyone help me with his things, but it was helpful to have someone in the house with me doing,
other things,
the non-emotional part of the house, next to me, so that, I wasn't alone, but
yeah, that even right there, I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
We know what you wished you would have known in advance. We know that, unless there's anything else you want to add. No.
Oh.
Okay. And you've given us incredible, I think, insight and wisdom into how we can navigate these things in advance. I think this idea of sitting down twice a year and just having this discussion, making sure that some of the things that you've already recommended we're both aware of, but who knows how many of our listeners don't have a trust, don't have a will, don't have whatever it is that is needed. And there are lots of inexpensive ways to get those things done. We don't need to be overwhelmed with like a big attorney's office and thousands and thousands and thousands in fees. There are lots of simple ways to do that online that are secure. If you can find somebody that's a human to talk to, that is the recommendation always, because that person can be with you later, right? And walk you through whatever was discussed or whatever was agreed upon, right?
Yeah.
What, normally at the end of this conversation, I ask our guest how whatever they're doing has liberated them. In this case, you're liberating us. In this case, you're sharing this information with us, both as a warning, don't do what I did, but also as really a gift to pass on based on everything that you've experienced. And again, I think you mentioned earlier, whether it's a partner or a parent, these are really important things to know and will ultimately aid in our ability to just grieve when the time is, the time comes for us to grieve. How has this, or why has this been important for you? Why was it important for you to share this information with your friends and to be kind enough to share it with our listeners?
Because that's what women do, don't we?
Yeah.
Right?
Well said.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
What is community if it isn't the coming together to pool our collective experience for the good of each other? You know this. I've said this to you before. Andy and I had a great group of friends and family and everything. We knew it, but I did not understand how powerful that net that we had knotted together, relationship by relationship, how powerful that was going to be in getting me and my children through this. And once you see it activate under you, you're falling and this thing activates and it doesn't let you hit the ground. And it wasn't just friends and family, colleagues and strangers and all sorts of people showed up. You can't help but want to say, how can I be part of that net for someone else? And part of that is saying, hey, I know that unless someone had told me, I would have never thought to do any of these things that I'm suggesting. I would have never woken up one day and been like, I'm going to research these things because I'm interested. So again, Laura said, Yvette, you're going to be the first, but you're not going to be the last. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to be the first, there's got to be something out of this that I can share for the good of, for maybe not the good, for the slightly less terrible for somebody else.
Well, you did it. You did it. You did it for the slightly less terrible for so many of us. And I can't tell you how grateful I am.
Oh, anything for you. And it wouldn't be a conversation with you and me if we weren't crying.
It's true. It's very true.
I really appreciate you letting me talk about this. I know we didn't just talk about Andy, but it's still the biggest gift anyone can give me is the chance to talk about him. So.
Well, he's worth talking about, and he is not physically with us, but he is so with us.
He would be so proud of you. You know that, right?
I know. Would he? Let's hope so. We're going to find multiple ways in the show notes to, again, link people to the very practical things that you're talking about. And let this be just one more way that Andy's reaching out and helping us lead a beautiful life, because that's what he did so well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too, babe.
Liberty listeners, thank you guys for taking this time to be with us. And bye for now.